I will call to order the City Council Transportation, Energy and Utilities Committee at 5:33 p.m. And the first item on our agenda is a motion to adopt or amend our agenda.
I would move to adopt the agenda as posted on Civic Clerk.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We have our agenda. Oh, Becca's joined us online.
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm here.
Excellent. And the next item on our agenda is adoption of our minutes from our May 26th meeting.
I move the adoption of the minutes as posted.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Hi.
And that's, we have adopted the minutes, and both of those were any unanimous votes for anybody keeping track. Next, we have public forum. Is there any member of the public online who would like to address the TUC?
There's no one online right now.
There's nobody here in the room. So I will open and then we close public forum, which brings us to our deliberative agenda. And before we begin it, I would want to say that the reason that we're having all of these items tonight, update on BED initiatives and update on some of the Department of Permitting Inspection compliance measures. We want to just get an update on the committee as to how some of the progress is going as it pertains to resolves in various council action over the last couple of years. And so what I did, and I reached out to both of you, and I know there's nothing written that you provided, but I did look for the resolutions and the ordinances that were pertinent to this discussion. And I did ask, and Rob earlier today attached them to the agenda. So for anybody here, note that those are part of our agenda packet now. They weren't this morning. For any of the viewing public tonight or later, know that those are attached to this meeting. So with that, we'll turn to our deliberative agenda. And the first item is an update on BED initiatives. And so we have General Manager Darren Springer here.
Thank you. I was going to provide a little bit of a broader update, not just specific to the resolution that was posted on the agenda. So cover a few topics, although I will cover some items related to that as well. The first is I just wanted the two members to know that we're in the midst of and hopefully moving towards a conclusion of an important process, which is our demand resource plan, which sets our 3-year budget for our efficiency programs. We pursued legislation this past session, which was enacted, H940, I believe it's Act 97, that gave us flexibility to continue to use some of our funds in innovative ways. So as part of this 3-year efficiency budget that would govern between 2027 and 2029, not only would we continue to do the electric energy efficiency that we've done historically, but we would be in a position to offer some new programs, including a number of what we think of as pre-weatherization focused programs, where we know through our partners at CBOEO and Vermont Gas, there are a number of properties, and I'm sure Bill knows this too, a number of properties that are good candidates for weatherization, but they don't have the ability to move forward because of vermiculite, firing, or leaky roof, or an electric panel issue, or a variety of other issues. And so there hasn't really been a funding source to help remediate those issues. And through this proposal, we will now be able to do that. In fact, we're even starting a little bit earlier because we have some funds we're able to dedicate towards that this year. So we're working with BGS on that and CBOEO, and we'll have a more significant amount of funds to support that next year. We also, if you recall, when we brought our miscellaneous fees forward, we committed to the council that we would pursue legislation that would enable us to offer income qualified customers electric panel upgrade support. That is in the bill that was passed and it's in our proposal. So we expect starting next year to be able to help income qualified customers who need to upgrade their electric panel to support energy efficiency projects to be able to do so, building on a state pilot program that operated for a year or so, but then ran out of funds. In addition, we also will be able to continue our successful geothermal test well program, which helped the high school with their test well and the library with their test well and Hula and others. And obviously we can continue to support geothermal incentives as well. But we know the test well is another gap filling issue where if you don't have the money, the 10, 20, 30, 40,000, whatever it ends up being to do a test well, there's a risk there. You might not hit the right type of water to be able to do a system. So we help de-risk that for the customers, and then we help them when they want to install geothermal systems, and the high school being one of the latest examples of that. So that program will continue. We'll also continue to do our commercial custom program, which has helped us with things like the electric transit buses with Green Mountain Transit, different types of chiller projects around the community. And then importantly, we'll be able to continue our boosted electric vehicle incentives, which we announced with the mayor back in August of 2025. We knew we would be able to continue those through 26. As part of this proposal, we would continue those through 2029, as well as support multifamily and rental property EV charging installations as well. So this is currently pending at the PUC, and we have some good process going with the Department of Public Service, and we're hopeful to have that all wrapped up and enacted and implemented for 2027. But given how much good climate work is potentially enmeshed in that proposal, I wanted to provide an update on that. I can pause for a second if there are questions, and then I have other topics to cover as well.
I had a question, I guess, just generally. These are funded out of it's the bonding to.
No, so some of these are funded through the energy efficiency charge. Some of our electric efficiency work is funded really through the efficiency charge you see on your bill. It's a line item. But a lot of the other work that I just mentioned is funded through the TEPF, Thermal Energy Process Fuel Fund, which really comes to us from revenues that we get from participating in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative as a state, and Burlington gets a piece of those revenues, as well as bidding our energy efficiency projects into the ISO New England forward capacity market. So we're able to say to ISO New England, we've reduced electric needs by X amount, and then there's a monetary value associated with that that comes back to us. So those are the two primary revenue streams that support TEPF, and pretty much everything I just laid out is under the TEPF umbrella. Excellent. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. A smaller update.
Becca, did you have any questions? Becca, if you have questions, just use the raise hand function so I can see you better, and I'll pause to recognize you.
Thank you. No, I'm good for now.
Okay.
Okay, so update number 2. We've been considering a proposal from a vendor to install a solar canopy in our parking area at BED, which we know would be a good use of our space. The economics of doing that are a little less compelling than doing a straightforward solar project because you're really doing a lot of additional infrastructure to do a parking canopy. So they don't tend to be the best from an economic standpoint compared to, say, rooftop solar or larger ground mounted, but would be an interesting opportunity to continue to demonstrate. We have about 100 kW of solar on the roof at our facility already on 585 Pine. This would potentially be about another 130 kW of solar. So for Burlington, a pretty substantial amount. That would be, I believe, what we think of as bifacial panels. So there's a energy generation technology on the top, but also on the bottom, so that you can get reflecting kind of sunlight from snow and things like that, and produce energy that way as well. So we're actively exploring that. We will be working to see if we have a proposal that can advance in that space. That would be something we would potentially consider paying for through bond funding, because the capital outlay, while not insignificant, would be well within our means to cover with something that we can do through one of our bond authorities. So just an opportunity to continue to support solar in Burlington, do so in a way that would be very visible and demonstrable for all the customers who visit us at 585 Pine. So for folks who are familiar with our facility, we'd be looking at the customer and guest visitor kind of space and having a ballasted parking canopy that would cover that space. and the solar in that area. Obviously, we have quite a bit of brownfield and other kind of environmental considerations. So doing a ballasted system as opposed to something that punctures the ground is most likely preferable. So just a brief update on that. Third update, digging in now to McNeil. I think we've talked at length in the past about battery storage at McNeil as being part of our broader vision for using the site for energy innovation. I think the Valeri report mentioned, 5 megawatts of battery storage as being an important contribution to, additional distributed generation in the city. We've been working fairly intensively, our team, to identify, following a battery storage RFP we issued and received responses to in 2025, to identify the opportunity to move forward at McNeil. We believe we've identified an appropriate site within the plant that would be good from a siting and electrical standpoint. We are having discussions with our joint owners about the opportunity to advance that. And we're working to finalize some economic analysis and select the vendor that would have the best proposal for us to advance that. So I mention it tonight, not only because it's important from a McNeil and energy innovation standpoint. This would be something that we will endeavor to bring to our electric commission for consideration on July 8th and bring concurrent to the Board of Finance City Council on July 13th. So this is something that we can advance in the very near term. We would bring a term sheet with all the key kind of provisions, and we would bring some modeling and analysis so you get a sense of what the profile looks like for us. These are not, and like the solar project, there's an economic kind of bounding around battery storage. So over, say, the first 5 years, we think we can have a proposal that based on current markets will very much have a strong economic case. As you go out 20 years, the economics get a little less certain because you don't know what the market is going to look like. You don't know what the value streams are going to look like. That said, we know we're in a region where every winter we don't have enough natural gas capacity to run plants in the region. We don't have any natural gas, but we know the region relies on it heavily. We know the region relies sometimes this last winter, 30–40% of the generation was coming from oil peakers at given points of the day. That's not a sustainable thing. We know battery storage can contribute in summertime to peak reduction, every month to peak reduction, and then certainly in the winter to helping with some of the demand management. And we are reasonably confident there will be value streams for battery storage that may yet, not be realized, that may come forward. So Burlington has been kind of decidedly behind on battery storage. We tend to want to be a leader. We tend to be a leader. We are not a leader on battery storage. Green Mountain Power has done some great work in this space. Other utilities in Vermont who have different service territories that have benefited from being able to switch folks off of generators and onto battery storage have had better economic cases to do this than we have. But this would be a substantial project. We're talking about 5 megawatts of battery storage that's capable of dispatching 20 megawatt hours. So over a 4-hour period, you could dispatch 5 megawatts each hour to impact the peak demand. And keep in mind, we're a roughly 60 to 65 megawatt peaking system. So you're talking about a really substantial chunk of our peak that could be met with battery storage. And of course, we'd be using this when the region is peaking, when there's monthly peaks within the transmission system. So I share that not only in the context of like reporting out on McNeil and different items, but just that this is something that we're working extremely hard against a variety of competing priorities to advance, and that we would like to bring to the council in July, such that once we have an approval, we could try to finalize a contract with the vendor, move into the permitting and interconnection phase. I expect that could be a year-long process, certainly from what I've heard in terms of the permitting and getting all the things in order. But if everything went well, that would mean we'd be looking at construction next summer on the project. So that would be very tangible. Let me stop there and see if there are questions before proceeding.
Siting for the batteries, or where?
We're looking at McNeil specifically. We're looking at underutilized portion of the site in the ash pit.
Okay.
So we'll have to consider, and we've had some preliminary just review from an environmental and floodplain stormwater standpoint, but we'll have to consider all of those factors. But we know it's located in a place where it could be interconnected with reasonable cost and be able to be dispatched from that site. And it wouldn't be in a sensitive area of the plant site that would otherwise have, different considerations. So that's what we're thinking about.
Okay, yeah. trees that act as the windbreak. I can't remember exactly. I think that there are some.
There are.
And so, but they're relatively small.
Yeah.
Right? Are they to be taken down?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, we'd be looking at this existing footprint. I don't believe we'd be looking at taking out any of the trees. I'll keep you updated. If
Yeah,
something
no,
changes, but
I mean,
not aware that we're
yeah,
looking
I
at
mean, the ash has been under control for a while.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it still is there, but taking down trees is always fraught.
Understood. Yeah.
So,
But yeah, that's the general kind of vicinity. And, you know, we'd be looking at, they would look like storage containers, essentially,
Okay,
full of,
yeah.
battery storage.
Yeah. Any thoughts about the fight down in Virgins and the
Sure.
impact here? What?
Yeah.
Talk about that a little.
Yeah, I followed that a little bit just from the media,
Yeah.
not directly involved, but my understanding of the proposal there is it was located in a place where a homeowner had property and wanted to subdivide and build 5 new homes that would have been very close proximity to the battery storage. And I have no assessment of whether the claims that are being made are valid or not. But that said, I know from looking at McNeil, you couldn't think of a better site in a lot of ways. Already disturbed, it's already used for generation. There's already infrastructure there. It's not near homes or any residential use. And you know, I think in Vermont we've seen pretty much every form of energy has had some level of opposition, and I appreciate that. And people will raise concerns about each different form of energy. This is the first time I've seen it with battery storage. But you know, knowing that, I think we'd want to be thoughtful going forward if we were locating it in a different place. But at McNeil, I think it's a good location for storage because it's already a generating site.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably the key, and you're all probably involved in it, is because it's a wetland, because arguments have been made about, you know, sort of like things blowing up and then spewing out and what have you, then its impact on the wetlands there, where the ash is close enough to the area that
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
But we would go through all the appropriate due diligence for floodplain, for wetlands, for stormwater, make sure that everything was appropriate before we move forward. But yeah, if you're thinking about the 5 megawatts, a pretty good amount of storage. There's not a lot of places in Burlington where you could put it where it wouldn't be next to something. So this is probably as good a location as we can find. I mean, theoretically, you could put it in our parking lot at BED, but it'd be very visible and it'd be very, you know, obstruct our ability to use the site for events and things like that. So, yeah.
Great.
I don't see Becca weighing in. So the battery storage, it would be you like, I'm just curious. How large is 5 megawatts worth of battery storage?
I think if you think of a storage container, you'd probably be looking at like 4 or 5 of those potentially. Is my understanding. You know, they can be kind of lined up in.
Are they delivered that way, like as storage containers, and then they're wired together?
I mean, one of the places we looked at, we ultimately decided against, is in our switch yard at McNeil. There's power lines that go up kind of an elevated way. And originally we thought, well, that could be an interesting place to locate the storage, but because of the way they're delivered and typically, you know, brought in, it'd be really difficult to get those safely under the lines, for example. So, you know, the ash pit site's a more open site that'd be easier to deliver these types of storage units. But my experience kind of looking into these in the past is they very much look like a shipping container or storage unit, and inside is obviously all the storage technology, and then there's typically a little bit of you know, walkway between them so that you can access them for different things. But yeah.
And this would primarily be used instead of like firing up the peaker plant?
Not necessarily. So different use cases. So with the peaker plant, we actually are working very hard to convert that to run on renewable diesel, so that runs very infrequently. And we basically are getting revenue for ratepayers just to be available, just so the region has it if they need it. Runs very infrequently, but we did a test to run it on R99 renewable diesel, which is different than biodiesel because it's chemically identical to diesel. You don't have to adjust any of the kind of infrastructure to run it, but it has a far superior carbon footprint. It's being used in California and Oregon and Hawaii to replace diesel in transportation uses. And so we're working very hard to switch that over. But that said, so that's providing us revenue just to sit there and not necessarily be used. and to only be used in certain circumstances. The battery would probably be used every single month, multiple times a month, perhaps. You know, you'll have some sort of agreement with the vendor for how many times you can draw it down in a given period. It's called tolling. But what we would do is we would look at both the monthly peaks that you have within the state, and then the annual peak that we have for ice and moon, what we typically call the peak-to-peak events, and we ask everybody if they can to conserve. We would be dispatching it during those events, actively putting the power that's stored back on the grid, both to support our own customer economics, and then as part of the region, we'd be reducing demand during that time for what otherwise might be peaker facilities. Not necessarily our own, it may not correlate one-to-one, but generally the broader demand within ISO New England. So I can't promise we wouldn't get called for both items at the same time, or be running one and have the other, but there would be some general correlation with reduced peaker heat in the region.
Any other questions on this?
Not on the batteries.
Continue.
Okay. The last item that I wanted to cover, and it touches very directly on the work that we've done over the years, resulting in, from the 2023 resolution and then the Polarity report, and then the RFI that we did, is that we put out an RFI late last year asking for follow-up from vendors on the Polarity report recommendations, which, if you recall, they suggested that of the items that might have kind of a economic benefit and a carbon benefit, it was carbon sequestration was one item, organic Rankine cycle turbine was another item, although that one ranked lowest on their matrix, and then wood pyrolysis being the third. We didn't receive any feedback from the broader vendor community on carbon sequestration and capture, so I don't have anything to report really on that item. We received one proposal that related to organic Rankine cycle turbine technology. I don't believe it would have fundamentally altered the efficiency at the plant, and was really more applicable to situations that are either smaller scale and or combined heat and power. So if you think about, like, if you were doing district energy, for example, off of an organic Rankine cycle at a college campus, that would have a certain degree of efficiency benefit. But when you're at the scale that we're at, you lose some of that benefit. So we haven't determined to proceed on anything related to the organic Rankine cycle. We also received input about wood pyrolysis. As I think the TUC knows, there's an active proposal up in the Minden area for a 2.2 megawatt wood pyrolysis unit. We're actively exploring whether that technology has application for us, Burlington. And I think I mentioned this during the Net Zero Roadmap presentation back in April. But I think of this a little bit as a moment that's not totally dissimilar from the moment when we started to look at using wood at Moran. There was a period of time where that was a coal-fired plant, but they were looking at, can we use wood? And they had, I think, of the 30 megawatts, they had 5 megawatts being generated with wood for a period of time. The run was successful enough over a period of years that they, at the time, I wasn't involved, obviously. I don't think I was born even at the time, but they determined that we can move forward with McNeil, and then it was developed, and I was born when McNeil was built, so I was over there today. We always have the shovel from Mayor Bernie Sanders, all the folks back in 1984 who had the facility constructed. But I think what we need in order to consider new technology would be some type of a demonstration opportunity. So we're actively exploring, alongside battery storage, can we do something with that type of technology at a scale that's not light, at a scale that would be meaningful. And the potential for that is, I think, threefold from what I understand. One is, you're talking about a process that initially is a non-combustion process where you're heating wood and you're producing a syngas that can create energy generation, and you're producing biochar. Biochar has obviously a huge carbon benefit because you're taking the concentrated carbon from the wood and you're using it with revenue potentially to create agricultural opportunities to sort of re-inject that carbon back into the soil. And there are markets for that. So there's an interesting carbon benefit there. There is an interesting efficiency benefit from this process, whereas I understand it could be potentially upwards of 60% efficient. So you're going to use less wood input to get the same amount of energy, and you're going to have a reduction in what we think of as stack carbon, potentially by half compared to our conventional process. So that's something I want very much to explore. We wanted to advance the battery first. That's a project that's more ready to go at the moment. While we also try to meaningfully explore and see if there's an opportunity to advance a project for consideration around wood pyrolysis. Again, as a demonstration first, so our team can get used to it, so we can see if it works in real time in the real world, because we know there are units in Europe, but the Linden project is the first one proposed that I'm aware of in our region, or maybe even in North America. So it'd be great to be second on that front and make sure that all the permitting and different issues that get worked out within the Linden project, assuming that moves forward, that we can benefit from that process and learn from it as we go. But that's something that I think would be responsive to a number of the points that were in the resolution initially, in terms of how can we cut stack carbon, become more efficient, how can we look at ways to move away from traditional wood combustion towards new technologies, but do so in a way that continues our reliability, continues our affordability. Because as I also shared at the net zero roadmap presentation, our strategy as a whole has been working really well for our ratepayers. We now have some of the lowest residential rates, not just in Vermont, but in the region as a whole. And we are seeing a level of stability, I think, with a diversified renewable portfolio combined with efficiency and combined with thoughtful strategic electrification that is doing better than being on volatile fossil fuel over a longer period of time would be. So I want to be thoughtful as we look at this transition and do it in an appropriate way, but that is a promising option that we would like to continue to look at and potentially bring something that's actionable to our governing bodies, but not in July. This is a longer term effort, but hopefully in the coming months we'll have more detail that we can share. Why don't I stop there, see if there are questions.
Yeah, just briefly, going back to battery storage, you said something's coming forward in July. Did not hear, can you remind me what is specifically coming in July for that? And then,
Yes.
and then I guess kind of the same question with the wood pyrolysis, not July, but maybe the fall, what would be coming forward then?
Sure. So for the battery storage, I would expect we'd be able to present essentially a term sheet that would have the key provisions of what we're going to be committing to and what the vendor is going to be committing to, and that you all would be able to review it, ask us questions, see our modeling, and then if you approve it, we would have a provision that the term sheet would be turned into a contract subject to city attorney review and could be finalized, and then the project could move into permitting. So that's kind of the necessary governing body step from our commission and then the Board of Finance City Council to let us advance that project. That would be for July. I would anticipate that it might be the fall or maybe the early winter before we would be in a similar position with anything related to wood pyrolysis. And that's less certain at this time. We're still kind of exploring the concept, whereas with the battery storage, I'm more confident that we have all the pieces together that we'll need. So those are the various timeframes.
And then for wood pyrolysis, would that be like a pilot program, or would it be on a similar-ish scale to the battery storage?
It would be kind of in between, I think. If you think about a 2.2 megawatt, which was what was proposed up in Lindenville, if you were to do something like that at McNeil, obviously we're a 50 megawatt plant, but this runs differently. We tend to run during kind of the summer and the winter when prices are high. We tend to come offline during the shoulder seasons, and we restock, we refuel, we do maintenance and other things. My understanding of this technology, it's more steady state. It's going to run kind of at a consistent level year round. So in terms of energy production, my understanding is you'd be talking about, it would be equivalent to about 1/10 of what McNeil as a whole produces, or about 1/5 of what Burlington gets from McNeil. So not insignificant, and at a level that would be enough to say, yes, it's a test, it's a pilot, but it's actually producing real energy. And we'll get a real sense of what the benefits are potentially from running it. And it could provide some interesting resilience too, because as I mentioned, it would run at times where maybe we're not online otherwise. And at peak times, it could amplify our impact, and other times it could be something that could be more of a steady state operation. So, if you think forward to the future, there's a lot of interesting modularity you could come up with this configuration. If you were to move more fully to wood pyrolysis, you could have a certain number of units, and you could run some of the year and others more during peak times. There's a lot of interesting configurations, but we're kind of at the first step. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So this is great. Totally appreciate it. I'm feeling when I'm looking at the resolution, got it up.
Yeah.
Right, that we've got a lot of things that we're supposed to be working. Some of them are working collaboratively, like the stakeholder meetings on the progress. Others you're investigating, you've done a bunch of them. I'm feeling that I need, and the public needs, a report that's in a template that really goes into what we call for and says, this is where we're at with it. And I'm not asking for it right now, you know, because I am asking for it now, but I'm not asking for it, you know, and I'm not complaining that we haven't gotten it because we haven't necessarily asked for it in a way, and something that allows us to, because these are things that are moving forward. So getting one report, you know, I mean, is important, but then there's another one to do. And I look in particular at the at the one where we have got, it's on line 157, where we say under the auspices of 2 and BED holding meetings or convening meetings as necessary, including with community groups to monitor progress. And so I see those, and those meetings are gonna do reviews. I could make an argument that these meetings are that, but I actually don't think that they're sufficient in that way, where they're in a crowded agenda where we're engaged in the work of the committee as opposed to it being focused on, well, McNeil is really the departure point. So I'm really hoping that we could have something, maybe it's in September. So maybe it's in sometime, you know, so that there's enough time where we can say, okay, it's basically just sort of this grid template, you know, when we're talking about these things. You know, you've got the Valerity report, so we've done things on it, and now we're moving forward and being able to analyze that. It would be great, for example, we've done the forestry, but we continue, you know, we're harvesting, we're working, so that work continues, and getting updates in that would be exceedingly helpful. And I'm thinking that that having a special meeting on that, the public would really appreciate that for this area, for this area of inquiry, so to speak.
If I may,
Of course.
so in looking at the resolution, I think we've actually completed all of the work product that we committed to from BED. And I'll just run through it at a high level. We did look at the wood chip dryer, which was the starting line 76. We did proposals around that. We did 2 studies on it, one with an engineering firm and one with Valerity. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, because our wood is relatively dry, there's not a lot of opportunity to pursue that. But so I view that item as kind of covered there. We did on line 86, we presented the budget proposal and we procured the third-party forestry review, and that report was completed, presented at the 2 in September of last year.
If we could, so the dryer, I think, is right, and other efficiency improvements is what's part of this. So it's not just the dryer.
Well, we did the subsequent RFI last year, which resulted in us looking at the wood pyrolysis.
Right.
So
there's an example of this thing is you know, like one could say that the dryer is done.
Yes,
right?
I would say that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that is not unfair.
Yeah.
The other efficiency improvements is ongoing.
Well, we've kind of narrowed that, I think, to the pyrolysis, which we're here reporting on right now.
Sure.
And should be back.
Sure. I mean, so part of this is not just doing it, but doing it in a form that we can match it with the resolution, because
somebody needs to do that, and it needs to be done not just for me, but for the public, I believe. Yeah, there are, I think it needs to be done in a different public setting.
I'm just slightly concerned only in the sense that we also did, we did reports back in October of 24 related to the lines on, starting on 100, about the planning and the various pieces. We reported back to the council in October of 2024 on that. We have participated in a number of commission TUC meetings that have included vigorous.
And again, I am not accusing you.
No, I understand,
right?
But I'm concerned mainly that our capacity is as limited as it's ever been.
I appreciate
We're undergoing a very time-intensive DPS process audit, as you know, that's happening now in real time, and that our team is spending a good number of hours on. We are dealing with trying to advance projects with some really severe staff constraints, and I feel we very much, at least from the BED side, have completed all of the tasks, not all of the work, but all of the tasks that were laid out for us. The remaining piece of work that I see very much is, can we do wood pyrolysis? Can that be the means to which we accomplish some of the goals that are still in this resolution relative to efficiency and carbon? And I'm very much committed to coming back and talking to you about that again if it becomes a proposal that is more tangible, and having as much public input into that process as the TUC or the commission or the council would desire. But I guess I'm suggesting I'm concerned about setting up additional work product for our team with any sort of a special conversation. When we've done those, we did the forum back in 23 with the TUC on this, and we very much have taken public input on these issues significantly over the years. I'm concerned that capacity right now, if we want to advance all the other things I was mentioning and still be fully engaged in all the necessary issues, is as limited as it's been. And so I respectfully offer that.
and I take that offer. I accept that offer. I'm personally, and obviously I'm not in charge here, right? But I believe that we need to do the type of sort of reporting that I'm laying out, and that we do it in a different public setting. And I am conscious of the time constraints that you've got, and am, interested in working, because it's gotta be done, and it's real work, and I know about that. So, but I do not think that the way that we are doing this is satisfying the spirit and the need for it really is, a lot of it is a public facing aspect of this work. You still have got tremendous controversy in this community around the plan. I really believe that people are, they're not up in arms, as they were when they've got a proposal to fight about. But I get complaints all the time, and so and these things are ongoing. So obviously, again, I am not the decider in terms of this. I put out a 3-month thing, and I think that the template needs to be done in a way in writing, so that we have that. Minutes don't do it, even with recorded meetings. That's my opinion about this, because this is like ongoing. This is ongoing work that is also public facing.
Well, I certainly respect that. I'm very, very leery, as I'm indicating, of taking on additional work product from this resolution when we've put an immense amount of time and energy into satisfying all of the requirements of the resolution. We're always happy to engage in meetings. as much as we can for productivity. But I guess I'm suggesting that out of all of that work product, all of the independent reports that were required and completed, all of the reports from us that were required and completed, various public meetings where we heard from, some of the folks who had concerns and tried to take input into the RFP that went into those reports, and all of the various other forums that we've had, we have a technology that may be the path forward, may not be, I don't know for sure. I really would love to concentrate our efforts at BED, limited as they are from a capacity standpoint, and our efforts in engaging with you all and with the public on that discussion of, is there sufficient support for advancing a new technology that would give us a pathway to potentially changing how we run the facility, the broader kind of site over a period of years, in a realistic way, in a pragmatic way that respects the market that we're in, respects the environment that we're in from a federal standpoint. We were supposed to have all kinds of offshore wind coming into our region that has been hundreds of millions of dollars paid by the administration, billions of dollars to wind developers to cancel their projects, which they've done. I reluctantly acknowledge, I wish they had not. And they're taking that money to invest in other regions of the country in fossil fuel infrastructure. So we're really not at a good point to debate whether we need the renewables we have. We really need all the renewables we have. We struggled to just complete a replacement of some expiring contracts with new hydro just recently, as you know, both from Maine and Connecticut. So we're in a situation where we can continue to be sourced the way we want to be sourced. But I'd really love to concentrate whatever effort we have on that piece. Is this a pathway forward that we collectively believe is worthwhile? And if so, I'd like to spend time advancing it. And if it's not, it would be good to know that too, of course. So that I guess I'm suggesting if we could structure a future conversation in whatever way we have it on that question, that would be really helpful.
Something there with your idea.
Sure.
So you had mentioned earlier, you want to come back to us with more information on pyrolysis.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if that might not be an opportunity to sort of cover those things that Gina said, just to say that this is the resolution, this is how we address these various items as part of background context for where we are at, which would be at that point in time, hopefully you'll be talking to us about this wood pyrolysis project. And you think that that might be in the fall sometime?
I think it's more likely in the early winter. Just being pragmatic about the time frame.
If that were the case, I'm just wondering if we could dedicate a whole Tuke meeting to it. We would clear our agenda and you should come back and present that, and we could cover this. I think there is value in showing how much you have accomplished, because there is sort of an uptick in, we'll call it the controversy level in the community right now. I saw it at my own NPA like 2 meetings ago, I think. And I know that there's a group of people who are opposed to McNeil who are making the rounds again. And so we should be able to point to the good work that has gone into addressing many of the items resolved in this resolution, and sort of having an accounting of that. And then if there are things that still remain to be done or things that are ongoing, we can note those things, and it'll just be a good sort of like general thing. And I think we can do that in a way that doesn't cause maybe a lot of extra work to BD. And I would look to your feedback on perhaps that approach.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess I'd be most interested in having a focused conversation on the path forward and on what we're trying to do to address the addressable critique. Because I don't view simply closing the facility with no plan, no realistic plan for how we get that energy as a good idea. I don't know that anybody does.
And the resolution doesn't call for that.
Exactly.
Right.
So I want to address the addressable piece, which is, do we have a pathway that will achieve some of the goals here? I'm happy to try within that context of a future meeting where we bring up wood pyrolysis to again sort of tick through that we've accomplished. I think the pieces in here that we were meant to accomplish from BED. Obviously, there's some stuff in here about the Tuke doing its own work, and you've done a lot of that, I would argue, and I know that you'll continue to, and the commission as well. And there's pieces of it that we're not necessarily directly kind of responsible for, but we can participate in. But yeah, I think to the extent possible, I would love to have a conversation in the community, not so much about do we like or do we not like, should we shut it down or should we keep it, but is this pathway that we're identifying as a result of all of the work that's flowed from this resolution a viable pathway that people would like us to invest time and energy in? Because we need energy in a big way in New England, renewable energy, and this is a pathway to doing so that potentially has less impact and more benefit. And that's very much a conversation we want to have.
And so in early winter, that would be in this, maybe the November-ish timeframe.
Yeah, it could be November, December. And again, it's not a definitive. This is still something that we're exploring. We're exploring the economics, we're exploring the kind of the technology implementation possibilities for us. So I don't want to overpromise that we're going to definitively come back with something on this question, but we'd like to. And
So-
we hope to.
The floor is yours still. I was just trying
No,
to.
I think that's helpful. Again, I have one vote here, so that's all, but I would say that that is consistent and the focus that you've got is consistent. This is all consistent with what we've got from lines 112 through basically 165. Not, there's some stuff in there that's not. And so really tracking them. That's what I mean. People are looking for what we're doing to make things better, to lessen the impact across the board, however you want to define that. I think, on line 122 and 123 and 24 and 25. Why so? 122 to 125, there are stakeholders that are identified. We should figure out a way, and obviously we need time to do that. But to involve people, the union is a big player here. Part of my position that you got me to be the deciding vote on that, and it was my conversations with you.
Yep, understood.
Right? So we have the chance to continue to do work right, to show that when government talks, that it's going to follow up, that it's not just pacification talk, right? And that we're accountable and we're doing this work, and that's where I'm at with this.
No, I appreciate that. And yeah, to your point, lines 112 through 114 said we need to develop battery storage at the site, and we're here telling you we're bringing a tangible proposal next month.
So
right?
Yes, and so I want these meetings to lay that stuff out, because the next fight will be over whether to cite it there, right? And it's right over the hill for me, so I get to look at it, all the time. I'm perfectly fine with it, and we'll defend it. And but people need to know, and we need to engage people in this. It's not sort of the last minute stuff. Is a failed political approach to it. And yes, so I think that I'm happy with the way to blend these things, and to the extent to which you're going, even like the forestry, where you've done this, and this is what we asked for.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are changes or there are improvements or whatever else you're doing now in forestry, because it's ongoing work that's happening, being able to somehow get that out to folks. We can focus on forward-facing things. I understand the work.
Yeah.
Right. So I know about being overworked.
Yep. I appreciate that. No, we certainly, we appreciate the opportunity that we can talk about how we're checking a number of the boxes, because I think we've been very diligent in making sure we did that. This will be another one, the 112 through 114 line, where we bring that proposal forward. We realize another piece, and I think the wood pyrolysis is yet another piece. And so I appreciate that. We're very excited to do it. I want to be thoughtful just about, our kind of burden overall as an organization and what we can take on and deliver and when we commit to something, making sure we can follow through.
Yep, I mean, I think that I would want that meeting to have available at it, not just online, so people gotta work so hard to figure out when the Valerity Act. Apparently, I didn't save the Valerity report, right? I saved like the three-page report, right? I thought I saved it. Yeah, but I mean, like, it's a pain in the ass. I gotta like go back to our meeting. I gotta remember.
AI is good at that.
What?
AI is very good at it.
That's great.
Creating these things.
But
I just want to make
So-
sure that my hand was
I see you, and I'm gonna turn
Thank
the impacts back.
So, yeah, so having like, if there's work that has been already done that is already reduced to writing,
Mhm.
being able to put that in front of people so that it's available when we
Okay.
have a meeting, when we have, and we do the invite, I'd suggest we do it at Contois like we did the symposium, and I'll be quiet now, Becca, so that you could go on.
Go ahead, Beck.
Thank you. I did want to do a quick time check because I think we have a few other items on the agenda, so I won't take too long on this. But I like the ideas that are being discussed. I do want to echo some of Darren's concerns, and what I am hearing here a little bit. What I hear in your questions, Jean, and I realize this is my opinion, and others may disagree with me, but it almost, in a sense, feels like what you're asking of Darren is what I see our jobs and to some extent the administration, as elected politicians, it's our job to report out on the results of our resolutions. And I feel like Darren and his team have been doing a great job of translating, really detailed and technical information and giving those reports. And so I do just have the concern of and I think we've already moved past that in this discussion. We're agreeing that it's not all going to be on his team. But I think to the extent that we can be more proactive, like you were saying, with scheduling a symposium or just something similar to what we did with Jean, that we did with the cat ordinance, right? Like host an open forum and invite some different experts to come in and speak, and make sure we publicize it, make sure we work with the administration to perhaps send out an email about these topics, and we all do our front porch forum posts. I think that's the way, at least in my more limited experience here as a counselor, I have seen some of these conversations really move forward. And I've also gotten a lot of great feedback from residents when I provide those kind of updates. And it helps to calm these controversial issues, to just for us to take that on as elected officials and to have that responsibility of communication. So I just wanted to offer that out as my take on this whole conversation, because I just don't think our city staff is usually equipped. You do have a communications lead, obviously, at BED, but communication strategy is not really the core work of what we want you and your team to be working on. We want you to be doing a great job delivering energy to the citizens of Burlington. And so I think that's where we all need to step in and kind of help out with communicating that, because also we're the ones hearing most often in many cases from the public. So but thank you for all those updates. It is impressive to hear you kind of list out one by one everything that has happened. So appreciate you and the team, Darren, for keeping focused on that.
Thank you very much. And maybe just the last point, if I can.
I'm gonna have a couple questions too.
Okay, I'm happy to answer your questions. Just the last point on this point maybe is I would love to be very, very thoughtful about how we structure a future discussion on this, because we've had the Duke Symposium, we've had a expert panel, and we've had people debate whether or not this is a good thing or this is a good thing. And I think it's hard sometimes to draw in the broader community as opposed to folks who are very active on this specific issue, who we have heard feedback from. And I don't dismiss that. We're trying to lean into that critique and address the addressable portion of it for us. But I would love to really just structure any future conversation around the actionable piece that we're working on, and to get realistic and input that can help us with that, as opposed to kind of rehashing debates that we may have had in the past, because I think that may not lead us to as a productive a point. So I offer whatever help we can offer. I agree with Councilor Brent McKnight that communications is not always our strong suit. I'm always astounded how much people don't know about the programs that we offer, despite our best efforts to get the information out. So we'll do what we can, but I would love to be thoughtful, partner with you in structuring that to give us helpful feedback as we try to advance a good proposal.
Thank you. I just had a couple of quick questions, because we do, I'm glad Becca reminded us and time kept us a little bit. But I had a question about the state of the pyrolysis project in Linden. Is it?
Yeah.
You mean it's still like forthcoming? There's nothing permitted, or?
It's my understanding is it's in the permitting process, fairly deep into the permitting process. And that it was originally proposed as what would standard offer program project, which is here's the price you get, and the power goes pro rata to a bunch of utilities. And the Public Utility Commission and Department of Public Service determined it wasn't an appropriate project for that category. So now it is a project that would negotiate with a utility to sell the power if it's permitted. And I believe that's what's happening. So they're having conversations about, what that structure would look like. So it's fairly deep into the process. It's not all the way through the process. I'd love to see what happens with it in terms of the permitting and what, if it gets permitted, what conditions are placed on it, how the utility contracting process works. So there's some pieces there that would be good to learn before we jump in ourselves, I think.
And do they have a vendor selected? And
my understanding is they do. Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Maybe that's.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm saying that it would be interesting. Maybe the two would like to hear from the folks.
Yeah, well, we're talking with essentially the same company and the same vendor, the same technology. Okay. So we're in communication with them, and they're focused on that project. Obviously, not anything that we're doing here, but we're trying to learn.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It sounds like we will follow up and plan something for later this year, and hopefully we'll just keep us apprised of where things are at, and if there's some milestone or that Linden achieves, or you're ready to move something forward.
So we absolutely will. I appreciate the conversation and feedback tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you in July with the storage proposal as well.
So is there anything else before we move on? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
Absolutely.
Next, we have Director Bill Ward from Permitting, Department of Permitting and Inspections here for two items. And I don't know, if you want to structure the conversation, that's the way it's agendized, but I think it'll be a sort of continuum. But we can start with an update on the carbon pollution impact fee that was implemented by ordinance. It was a while ago now.
You're going to take my first slide off if you start talking about it. I can explain what it was. Go ahead. But it was at the end of 2023 to start with projects in beginning of 2024. But thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to make that larger after I just need to adjust that. All right. Okay. So this is the carbon pollution impact fee, and I put today's date because I'll tell you specifically about the projects that we'll be talking about, but it's not that entirety since then for a few different reasons. But as you just said, Councilor Barlow, it was effective at the end of 2023, starting for permits that were going to be issued in 2024. There were two major components, and it was that new construction had to demonstrate that they were going to use renewable energy, thermal energy primary heating systems, and large existing buildings, if they were going to replace their heating, had to use the same type of system that the new construction used, or if they did not, they would have to pay a carbon impact fee. There was an exception for large existing buildings or all residential buildings, and then there was a secondary one that I've listed for the letter B at the bottom. Buildings listed in the National Historic Register. The asterisk is simply to say that they would, if they're not just completely exempt, they would have to demonstrate that it's not possible for them to do it without impacting the historic nature of the building. So there's a threshold with that. It's not just that they're exempt. The piece I want to note about the timing of this is that I had some folks ask within 6 months of this, how are things going? Well, the life of a permit is 3 full years. And in some cases, folks get extensions on that. So we're really just getting to the point where we're having something that's reportable. As one example, in the information that we researched for this and looking for that first full year of permits in 2024, there were 14 projects that were identified as fully new construction that were not part of a rehab of an existing building. And of those that were permitted in 2024, only 2 of those projects are actually at the point where they've completed to get a certificate of occupancy. And those actually happen to be mobile homes. They're not the traditional construction. Traditional construction does take a considerable amount of time. Often it's 2 to 3 years. So that's why we're in a good reporting cycle right now for that first year. So the results, what I would say overall, I would call mixed success. What I've listed is some just caveats that tell you permits generally are down, all permits, not just talking about things that might relate to this permit, but the fiscal year permits, we're down about 30% budget-wise compared to what we normally see. It's hard to say whether it's all economic reasons or some other reason for that, but I think a lot of it does have to do with the cost of construction right now. But it's also a carryover from the previous year. The trades permits were down 15% last year as well. So we're definitely seeing fewer permits overall. But of the ones that we've actually seen a pretty solid number of projects that are overwhelmingly turning to renewable energy. Heat pump technology vastly, is the most common one that's used. And we're seeing some geothermal. I think we didn't even count the high school project because that permit started before this was in effect, but they're using geothermal there, and it's a great example. But that's much less frequently used than the heat pump technology. And I'll talk about some statistics in a few minutes. There's no carbon pollution impact fee collections to date, but our first major project that I'll talk about in a few minutes is on the horizon. It was just approved with the DRB in June. It's now getting to the trades project side of it, where we will have to get some information to Darren's team about, once we have the information, the project is actually the former Coffee Cup Bakery on Riverside Avenue. I've got a permit slide to talk about, but essentially we're not there yet with them because we don't have the information to give Darren. Once we know what they're going to use for natural gas, what equipment they're going to use, then Darren's team will assist us in figuring out what the lifespan of that project is and what the required fee with the carbon impact fee would be for that. But again, that's a good example of where we're at on the sort of horizon. What I call this conforming, because conformity or compliance comes in a variety of ways. I'd say most of the permits that were issued that would otherwise require us to delve in a little further, we have the folks from the Innovation and Technology Department helped us out with pulling some data from our OpenGov permitting so that we can look at what are the ones that had new construction or new unit listed in the the description, or that was what was effectively permitted within the system. But as I reviewed them, literally line by line, to make sure I was being as accurate as I could for this body, 90% of those are actually in existing buildings. So people are adding to their single family homes or duplexes, or they're adding on to create an ADU on their existing property, converting part of their existing space, adding units. That's great, because we are getting new units out of that. And I didn't specifically look at the numbers in that, but of that, quite a few of them are actually still putting in heat pump technology in that new portion of it, but that's not required. Because it's part, it's exempted because it's not fully new construction, but in standalone new construction. On the second part of the compliance, the renovations of the properties where there's over 50,000 square feet of building, then those only represent about 5% of all the permits that we issue. I did a similar line by line review of those, and most of those projects are adding square footage to their existing buildings. They are not replacing conditioning, their space conditioning system. So they're doing additions up at the hospital or things like that, but they're adding to the existing HVAC in the areas that they are, the wings that they are doing remodeling on. They're not changing the space conditioning systems. They're not replacing an outdated system. But some of the ones that are not listed on there, just I'll mention them just so that you can see the ones that are at these large properties of 50,000 square feet or more. Some of them were flagged as potentially needing to comply, but they ended up being for a parking lot, for a track resurfacing at the University of Vermont, for underground storage tanks at the hospital, scientific upgrades at UVM facilities. There were a couple of those. So there are a few reasons why they get flagged, because there's a lot of money being spent and it's a big renovation project at a large structure. Of the ones that are new construction and are in full compliance, as we would call, the Integrated Arts Academy, that's a geothermal project at 6 Archibald Street. 50 Mansfield Avenue, Monte Cristi, is a geothermal project. And at the hospital building at 1 South Prospect, they're doing a 4th floor renovation and they're using heat pump technology there. There were 74 permits that were issued for new units in 2024. That's what I was leading with. I was talking about how those were the ones that we were trying to decide, are they actual new units, like a new building built somewhere? 90% of them were actually on an existing home or additions to a multi-unit structure. And as I noted, some added heat pumps or the geothermal conditioning as required by the ordinance, even though they're not required to according to the ordinance. 4% of those with new construction used heat pumps for the space conditioning. Those were 176 South Music Avenue, the former VFW, 75 Cherry Street, that's the north tower of City Place. And a caveat there, the south tower, Chris Burns at Burlington Electric and I had reviewed that. Their permit came in just under the wire to the requirement, because they were in the permit approval process just prior to when the ordinance was in effect. So they were not required to, but the north tower does, and they're using heat pump technology. 53 Hyde Street is listed on our permit system as a demolish and remodel of 2 new units that used heat pump technology. There's one project that's still active, and I talked with the Darren this evening before the meeting started, just to confirm that we need to circle back with his team on this. I put that in there because as I reviewed it, I think it may need to comply with the carbon fee. And here's where I think we went wrong as a department. The project actually, so we're not supposed to issue the permit if we know that they're going to be connecting to the Vermont gas, as an example, or using fossil fuels. The project record shows that they paid an after the fact fee for their permit because when they applied, they had already started that project and were partially complete. I can't say what their intentions were, if they were intending to go around it, but I feel like that may why my staff may have missed that. But it's appropriate that they paid the $200 penalty fee, but there will be an additional fee if Darren and I review it and confirm it. It meets the threshold and they don't have a CO yet, so that's our capture portion of this to say they're not going to be fully compliant. They won't be able to get a certificate of compliance to close that permit out if they don't comply with the ordinance. I'll pause. I know I've been talking a while because there were questions on that or other things to date. Okay. I'm gonna use the example that I mentioned before at 436 Riverside Avenue. You may not be able to see that from where you're at. I can barely see it here, but I wanted you to see that this is one that I thought it was great that our zoning staff did a great job. This is not part of the zoning ordinance. And I think it's done correctly that way because some of these renovations to the larger buildings wouldn't necessarily need a zoning permit. Had we put this ordinance language in the zoning ordinance, we wouldn't be able to capture those, but it does give us the ability.
Rob, are you still with us? If you are, I'm wondering if you could enlarge that. And also, can we get this presentation?
Yeah, I can send that. Yep.
Yes, I am here and happy to post it.
Yeah, see if you can get it, make it, that's a little bit too big. Or maybe like,
So that basically says the building energy standards apply to the project. Please visit this link, right? Because of that. And if it's new construction or renovation to a large building, more than 50,000 square feet, the city's renewable energy requirements apply and are tied to related trades. So it's a, thank you, go back to that. It basically is a way for us to say, if a person gets to the end and say, you never told us this. Yes, we did. We told you as you were first getting into the process that this was a requirement. If you did something by checking that you were using, you were not using a fossil fuel when you applied for your trades permits, this is our gotcha moment to say, well, we did tell you. And we're not going to issue a certificate of occupancy unless you're in compliance. But I pointed out as a good example that it's there early on in the planning stage in case someone missed that, or if it's a technical review project and the person wasn't taking notes on what staff was telling them on this project, it's there. There really shouldn't be any doubt that the person knows what the requirement is. And if they don't know what that means, then they should certainly ask or click on the link to find out more information about it. So Mary O'Neill brought this to my attention in the zoning process, and I've already alerted the trades folks because we know it's going to be a big deal, but Darren has already shared with me as they go to calculate this, they'll need to know if it's a certain type of boiler that they're going to use, because that boiler, his team could then look at what that technology uses for a typical year and then chart that out, what the life of that, the 20-year life cycle of that equipment would be, and therefore they can calculate the carbon impact fee on that as well. So I think that's an important thing and one that we'll probably be able to report back soon, because within the next 30 to 60 days, they'll be applying for their trades permits, and they're not going to be getting one unless they have the acknowledgement that that fee is being paid upfront through Darren's team. Excuse me, not I'd say through Darren's team, but we'll create that with the CT's office. We don't have a budget line for it because it won't actually go to our department. It's got a very designated place where that money would be spent. So I'll work that out with Darren and Catherine Shaw to confirm where it's going to sit, but Darren and I have already talked about that. This was something that I think I thought more about as I was putting this together. I mentioned it to Councilor Bergman as he was coming in. I don't want to do what I did in preparation for this meeting because it was a little painstaking for me going through, line by line, because I wanted to feel like it was being as honest I could possibly be with you. Did I get all these things right? And I didn't approve all these permits. Staff that worked for me did, and if we got it wrong, I wanted to at least tell you. But what my plan going forward is, and I want your input on it, the plumbing and mechanical inspector and I will be meeting with the trades leader, Kim Ionelli. So John Ryan is the senior member of the department. He's been around a long time. He's really the gatekeeper, so that if someone clicks off that they're using a heat pump technology, but they come in and it's someone who actually is gas certified and the permit's not quite right, he needs to alert the rest of the team and trigger that fact that we're going to need to collect the carbon impact fee. So my direction to him is that he'll be doing this reporting to me on a monthly basis so that I can forward it to you on a regular basis. We can create a log of compliance for whether the fee is or is not required. The idea would be future reporting should be a lot easier for me, and therefore you get a greater confidence that it's not all over the place. Whereas I was putting this together, I wasn't sure which format to use or what would make the most sense to you. But the idea would be a standardized tube coming forward to presentation. It could be in 2 months that I give you a written report for you to digest, and I can come back and say, give me the questions that you have, and even bring John or Kim with me to talk about the process, things that are happening, or how we could improve it. I did have one of the staff members say it could be improved if it went into the zoning ordinance, but I'm not. I think that complicates things. I feel like right now it is in the right place. And we have a tagline in the zoning permit early on for folks. That's where I'm at for this particular portion, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I appreciate you letting that. And we will be adding that for anybody watching now or in the future. Hopefully that'll be part of the agenda packet. Yeah, I'll open up for questions.
No, I'm good. I think that the plan going forward makes a lot of sense.
Becca, do you have anything? No.
Yeah, sorry. My mute button is being sticky. Thank you, Bill, for that, both the overview and for doing all the work that you had to do to tell us. I just was struck by, I just want to name something that I think is really important for all of us to think about as we try to craft future, climate friendly, climate mitigation legislation or ordinances or whatever we want to call it. These timelines are so much longer than I even realized, and I just think it's important for all of us to really keep that in mind, and for the public as well, because I don't think I was on the council when this passed, but it was shortly after, and so I did see some work that followed it, but I did not know that we were talking about potentially, if you really stretch that out, that's 5 years before this could impact somebody. So that's really interesting and something I will be thinking about for the future. And also I think might shape, what we choose to focus on our energy on. You have to do a little bit of long-term, you have to do some long-term things because eventually they do add up, but we have to balance that with short-term action as well. And then the other topic, just to share with you that this brought up for me, is something, I do hear from folks who are trying to make the right kinds of improvements, energy friendly improvements, climate friendly improvements on their homes, and projects large and small. And it can be very challenging for folks. And so I also just, anytime we can all think about those, I think you and Director Springer both brought up some barriers that some of this work was designed to eliminate. I think that might be an even more powerful tool to fight climate change than making the rules stronger, so to speak, in some cases. Because if we empowered more people to use, the favorable or the existing tools that we already have, we just sort of lessen the hoops they had to jump through, I think that could potentially be an accelerating factor. So those are just my sort of reactions, but just mostly appreciative of the work and the update. Thank you.
One quick follow-up I'll add, I think it's for everybody. Thank you, Councilor Brown McKnight, for bringing it up, that anytime a constituent reaches out to you and has a concern like this is really an onerous requirement, or why is Bill Ward doing this to me? I think it would be great advice to say, we've heard over and over again, if you have issues like this, reach out to Darren's team. I'm saying this from the heart. They're great. The energy services team, Darren is exactly what he presents himself tonight on a regular day-to-day basis. His team will bend over backwards if the question is, what can I do? What are my options on how I can comply with the ordinance? His team would walk them through the different technologies. And if there are any exemptions for them, they would certainly give them, there's no secrets being, withheld to say people, to folks that they're on their own. I think Darren's team is totally on board. We want more units. So absolutely send them to his energy services team.
All right. So grudge match BED versus DPI is what I'm hearing. No, but that's really helpful, actually.
Right? We're the tough ones.
Yeah, you have to be the tough guys, and they're going to be the people who figure out how to sneak you in the back door.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really good feedback, Bill. I probably have some emails in my inbox that I could send that info to right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Becca. I just want to clarify something I think you said at the beginning. You have not collected any carbon pollution impact fee revenue yet.
No.
So there is a reporting requirement at the end of the ordinance lines 209 to 217 in the markup that I had attached to the agenda. And so at the end it says that you're supposed to start reporting to us no later than July 1st, 2026, and biannually thereafter, or otherwise upon request. And so your plan for 2027 sort of addresses your intention on that part of the ordinance. I
just good luck on my part. The meeting was scheduled the way it is.
Right.
I wasn't even focused on that part of it so much as to share the information.
No, I just wanted
we would have made a bigger deal of it because Darren and I both know creating that budget line, wherever that's going to rest, is going to be a big deal. And it's ultimately going to be Catherine and her team's call on where it sits. But yeah, but I don't even want to guess. But it's not going to be for us to spend or for Darren's team to spend. So we'll find.
And it will be a restricted fund.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so. Okay, anything else before we move on to the next DPI item? Okay,
I just sent that slide deck to Rob.
okay. And the next one is an update on the weatherization ordinance, which is an older ordinance.
Yeah.
That we've had an update on already once. And I don't want to get into you have another slide deck you're gonna
I do.
show us. Well,
Yeah.
but I won't go on, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Let's see, to the slideshow. Okay, like the last one, I'll start out with where we started. This is an example of what was in the original memo that Darren and I put together, because there was a list of where the properties were at for 90,000 BTUs, 70 to 89, 60 to 69, and 50 to 59, right? We had the smallest number in that first group having to comply in 2022. That number is actually down to below 10. But we'll talk about these in just a few minutes. But there were 733 properties that were out of compliance with the standards as they were designed by the ordinance that was passed. The current status is that overall, the big picture is that 83% of all rental units are in compliance. That's an exaggeration, if you will, because we've only moved the needle about 10% since the ordinance was started. We started out with in 70% already in compliance, because a lot of properties are pretty well weatherized to begin with. But for the properties that were over that, I've listed them as previously non-compliant. Previously non-compliant was, the properties that were over 50,000 BTUs when the ordinance was created. So since that point, there's 230 that are now compliant. There are still 503 that are non-compliant. I put the asterisk there to indicate that the BTU, that's their BTU reading only. It does not account for the work in progress. So if someone is on their way to complying by doing one of the stages of it, it still shows that, that still lists that property as non-compliant. Want to give you an example of, since I highlighted the properties that were in the worst case scenario, over 90,000 BTUs, this property at 2933 South Willard Street, 102,000 BTUs. In the last 2 years, we've had multiple failed inspections. They've come up to, almost $8,000 in fees, to the point where we were threatening them with the shutdown. Just prior to the end of 2025, they had appealed to the Housing Board of Review for some sort of relief. That's the prescribed, due process when the DPI team is being aggressive on housing issues. We thought it was the right thing to do. We don't want them to shut down, but we're requiring them to come into compliance. The fees were not making a difference. We could have made that 10 times. They didn't have the money. There were a number of issues. Most of this is public already, but I think it's really clear that the matriarch of the family passed away in February of this year. They're sort of in transit with this project, but what I mentioned about the Housing Board of Review, that was one of our ultimate tools besides the fees, to say we're going to potentially shut down the property because you're not complying with these things you're required to, and built up these fees. The Housing Board of Review gave some additional benchmark dates to say you need to hit these dates during 2026, and failure to do that means we want the director to come back and give us a request to vacate the units. So if it's that unsafe for the tenants or that out of compliance, then the board will make that decision based on the next step. So they are meeting the benchmarks barely, and they've just engaged their own attorney, Attorney Will Toll, who's assisting them through the process, which includes the handling the estate and dealing with some of the financial issues, because
This assumes.
it's right next to it. It's it's next to 41 South Willard Street, where we had a similar situation with some potential shutdowns of Cinequan's properties. But in this case, it's a 7-unit building that I've told them already, I don't want to shut the building down, but at some point we have to do something to, call their bluff. So we'll work on this one, but it's a good example. I think, Councilor Brown McKnight talked about the time that it takes. We've been pressing all the buttons and collected potentially a lot of fees. Those have now been leaned on the property because the Housing Board found in our favor, but they wanted to give them more time because of the unique circumstances to come into compliance. So they've got to continue the weatherization work. They've got some lead paint issues, for Councilor Bergman's awareness, because you're most familiar with it, but they've been out of compliance for lead paint for the state by 5 years. It's not good, but we're helping them limp along. I share this because I don't know, I've said it before, but I don't want to shut a property down, but that really is the nuclear option for not meeting these thresholds. But I wanted to also share some good news. This was a success story from this year. So from February of 2026, this is a property that was in the 58,000, so almost 60,000 BTUs was their original usage. They had gone through the weatherization program after being notified of the requirement, and that Vermont Gas is reporting back to me that they're now at 36,000 BTUs. Essentially what that does is it's the transition from on the city database that shows up for the public. I'll show you an example in just a minute. The person's status for weatherization for their property shows up either as compliant, non-compliant, or in progress, because you want to give credit to the people who are at least working on coming into compliance. But in this case, it was simply third party. It's Vermont Gas is the one who does this for us. They've let us know that the property is in compliance. How did we get to that point? In that case, it was from a direct notice from me that they had the compliance was coming up and they were in the current batch that was required to comply. But those are direct notice. I would say in 90% of those cases, it's coming from me because we don't have a lot of extra staff to take on these direct notices. Occasionally, it's to remedy a deficiency. People are coming into compliance. Unlike the Leclerc property that I highlighted that went to the Housing Board of Review, if one of the inspectors calls out the fact that they are non-compliant on their certificate of compliance, their rental housing inspection, people come into compliance because of that and pass their housing inspection. The other one is this time of sale has helped us by having this information on the city website. Attorneys take note, the buyers take note. I'll go back in just a minute. I think this is what folks are highlighting on the city assessor's website. The property address is listed and the weatherization status. In this case, that's the one I just mentioned on Isham Street at 52 Isham Street. It's showing compliant. If it's not in compliance, it would show non-compliant. But occasionally we get these from random outreach from property owners. So someone who is, let's say, in the below 55,000 that we're not aggressively going after, they're still out of compliance because they're over 50,000 BTUs. Someone will see that on the website and say, what's that mean? And when we remind them, we're coming for you, we're just getting the ones that are most out of compliance first. People are finding them on themselves, and that's why I call them random outreach from people trying to understand why does my property say it's out of compliance. And that is something that was not required in the ordinance, but something that Darren's team and I came up with putting on the website. I thought it was a great way to motivate some people and put it out there for people to see, because we couldn't move fast enough to get all of these places into compliance on our own. So here's the challenge. There's continued delays, and you've probably heard it endless times now. There's workforce delays in the weatherization work. It's not easy work, so there's not people clamoring to become weatherization experts. Scheduling of the audits is limited because there's a limited number of certified staff to do that. The free ones that are for single family homes are done through Vermont Gas. The other ones need to be paid for. Once that same delay happens again, once the person is scheduled after the audit, they tell you what type of weatherization work you need to comply. Getting that weatherization work is an additional 6-month delay to get the work started. And sometimes it can end up being even longer than that. So the caveat I put in there underneath says that we're competing not just with all the people who are out of compliance for the rental housing, but every single family homeowner or other property owner who's trying to get weatherization work. There's people who don't need to comply because the ordinance requires it. They're just trying to save money. It could be any, counselors that are participating here. If you're trying to get in and get someone to do this work at your house or have an energy audit done, Vermont Gas is going to take you in the number that you came in. It doesn't matter if someone's higher out of compliance. when this started, we saw a huge influx of people who are not required to comply, but just wanted to save energy and save money. They were jumping in and essentially getting ahead of the line, creating those additional delays. It's not a bad thing, because overall, we're still reducing, the carbon impact from having that weatherization work being done. And as part of Vermont Gas, their obligation to do this work to reduce their carbon impact. But there's enormous amounts of competition going on for the limited weatherization staffing. I mentioned it quickly that the overall, the thing about the fee, there was a free audit that Vermont Gas was offering to every rental property if you're out of compliance. That has become more and more difficult for them to accomplish, because if you think of your own single-family home, or what it would be like in any typical single-family home, the auditor's coming in, if it's 1 or 2 people or a handful of people who live there, they're securing the windows, giving them like turn off the fans and things like that. They're sort of locking that building down so they can actually capture how much energy is lost during their blower door test and the essentially the audit of what they're doing to figure out where you're losing your energy and how much energy you're losing. Now you add on, let's say it's a 10-unit building, you've got 10 different tenants who all need to be cooperative with it, not sick that day where they don't want someone in their unit, or not asking the property owner for an extension because of some other reason, or they want to be present or don't want to be present. There's a lot of logistics that go into that. And what Vermont Gas was finding is that some property owners were good at that and they were able to work on those tenant needs. Others were not so good, and they would show up to do the work, and the tenants would have last-minute requests that Vermont Gas couldn't accommodate. And in some cases, the Vermont Gas folks showed up and the property owners' representatives didn't show up, so they couldn't work with those tenants. Vermont Gas has decided it's too complicated. They've got limited staff to do this. They're only doing 1 and 2 unit families for free. The other folks need to get an outside contractor through the Building Institute team that's available. There's a website that we provide to property owners, but there's a fee associated with having that audit. That is an additional, I'll call it a detractor for folks, because we did originally advertise this as a free audit from them, but it's required nonetheless. But we're notifying people of the requirement that there is a fee. I mentioned the tenant inconvenience, regardless of whether it's an outside auditor or Vermont Gas, that does make it challenging for the scheduling. We do have limited TPI staffing. Of particular note, for the last 6 months, we've been down at least 1 and right now 2 positions. We've had staff influx. We've lost 2 staff members in the last 6 months to move to CEDO. We're in the hiring process, and in the process of doing that hiring, one of our staff members took one of the open positions because it was a pay change for them and they wanted to do that work. So it's still, we filled the position, but it still left us with the 2 openings. So we're working with 2 people down. One of them is an administrative person who would be a key person for this and the thermal energy audit. We have a replacement for that person. They're coming from out of state. We've made an offer, and we expect them to be here August 3rd to start. So our limited staffing should be wrapping up within the next 30 days, but that adds an extra challenge. Probably the biggest challenge at the moment, though, is that we have outdated BTU usage data. If you go back to 2019, the data that Vermont Gas did for us was looking at the last 2 to 3 years of aggregated data for normalized winter heating for these buildings. So if we're going to be going after, for example, I'll mention the LeClaire property, we've actually gone back to Vermont Gas and say we need new updated data. Because if we're going to court, I don't wanna have a gotcha moment where we're saying, hey, you're out of compliance, we're bringing full enforcement. And then we find out, well, we were using data from prior to 2019, and guess what? 2026, for whatever reason, tenant usage might have been really stingy and they were really careful about using a lot of heat over the last 2 seasons, whatever. We didn't want that surprise. So we're asking Vermont Gas in groups of 15 properties at a time to go back through that list of still 500 properties. It's important. I saw Councilor Bergman nodding his head, but we can't use outdated data for this if we're gonna be doing enforcement. So that adds to the extra time of this. And I don't want to get Vermont Gas to give us 500 properties at once, because we'll be back in the same process. By the time we get to the last groups of properties on that 500, that information will probably be outdated as well.
And that's the actual billing data that Vermont Gas.
Yeah,
has.
that's the last 2 years of usage for the heating seasons, and they use their own formula for determining that. They're great partners on this, but there's no way I can ask them to do more than what they're doing now, and that is to keep up with the pace that we can press the enforcement button on these properties. So, as I talked about with the carbon impact fee work that we'll be doing, here's the plan for the upcoming year for 2027, the fiscal year. So we've got 131 properties that we audited that are actually out of compliance for rental housing and for rental weatherization. Those are our top priority for getting those properties into the inspection process and the weatherization process. Some of those properties also owe us fees on other past inspections. We have additional time, thanks to the city council just passing the budget that was, we've got some overtime for some existing administrative work that we're going to use to collect that outstanding fee money. And some of that will go into prioritizing these properties that are out of compliance for these things as well. That will likely create additional revenue, not just the the outstanding amount of revenue that those people owe us, but because these folks are out of compliance, my gut tells me that they're going to be slow to respond on this. But by tracking it, we'll be able to track both the out of compliance date for late fees and the interest that's associated with it, but also for non-compliance with new housing orders as they get scheduled, because they have re-inspection fees of $75 per unit if they're not in compliance in the first one, $150 per unit for the second inspection, and $300 per unit for the third re-inspection. That's how the Leclerc property on South Willow Street got to $8,000 in fees that they owe us. It adds up quickly. So the idea would be to report this on a quarterly basis going forward to the two, so you can see how we're doing with what I'm proposing on this, and happy to add other things to that based on questions that you have tonight.
Thank you. Questions?
The number of buildings using 50,000 BTUs or more is how many?
503 right now.
That's it.
Rental housing.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
I mean, that is out of,
3,100.
okay,
That's rental housing?
And I just say, I think there's a pretty good number. I didn't want to dig too far down into it. There's a lot of those that are just in that last group of just over 50,000.
Yeah.
And some are even like less than 100 BTUs off from that. So that's real. Yeah, we really do want to hit those ones that are at the highest number to get the best bang for our buck. But we'll take them anywhere we can get them. Like the Isham Street property, because we didn't have to nudge them.
Yeah.
They just did that on their own. That's why I wanted to highlight that. And that was a 2026 compliance. They wanted you to see that, the work is ongoing. It's just incredibly slow.
and so at the end of the the work that's done, do we get a new BTU usage number?
Yes.
And so, I think that that would be really helpful, whether, I don't think that it has to be done on an every 6 month basis, but annually, to be able to see what the changes in BTU's usage is over the course of, of time, like,
So
so.
are you talking by property or like overall? The one I used before was Isham Street, went from 58 to 36. Are you talking about giving me a list of properties that have gone from this to this?
At this point, I think that whatever would be easiest in the ideal world, we'd really sort of, we'd have whatever the markers are that would allow us to say there's progress being made, but perhaps there are issues with certain types of buildings, certain types of owners, and so you start to, when you get the individual information, you can get to start to think about that. At this stage in the process, being able to see whether we're making a difference, what the difference is that we're making it, that seems to be pretty substantial. That's like a third cut, right?
Yeah.
Little, maybe a little less or so. But that's significant. So that would be really, really helpful, so that we can, at the end of the day, we wanted to know that our standards are objectively reducing the carbon impact, and hopefully they're also making those units better for the people that are living in them. And you can't really get metrics on that. You can get anecdotes, which are always good to get, but
You just gave me a great idea, and I'm happy to have the minutes reflect that this, I think it might be, we're always beating up on property owners. It might be a great way to highlight good work by not just letting you know about it, but putting it on our website. In the last 30 days, these properties went from, dropped their BTU usage by this amount. So be there for everybody, and a pat on the back for them for saying they did a great job.
absolutely, there are a lot of reasons why houses are using up a lot of energy, and our job is to say, hey, and then proceed to help them. So yeah, no, I think that would be a great thing to do.
Questions. I just had a question about the work that the city has been doing on workforce development, specifically about in weatherization trades. Has that, and I know it's probably hard to measure the impact that that's had, but if you have any anecdotes even to share with us on whether or not some of those additionally newly minted weatherization workers have helped with the backlog at all?
No, but that's certainly something I could put in my next report. I think, reaching out to the weatherization contractors themselves, they would probably give me the best real-time data,
Right.
Or even Vermont Gas could tell me, because they do work with these Building Institute certified teams to tell us, what are they seeing? Are we seeing a increase in the workforce? It was helpful the last time we reached out to them because we were looking for their feedback on what's going well, what's going wrong. And what we were hearing from people that they didn't like contractors didn't like working in Burlington because they're always getting parking tickets. And the parking team actually responded to that, and Chapin's team, running the parking unit, got a contractor pass specifically for that type of work. They can come in and they pay for it, and it's good for the year. Like, don't worry about getting parking tickets. You're parked in the residential neighborhood doing work, you're all set. That seems to have been really well received. And it was an answer to their cry for help. They were quiet, but when we asked them what's going well, and Darren and I were looking for some ways that we could help them, and they said, well, more people working in Burlington would be good. And we hear from contractors, they don't want to work in Burlington because they get tickets.
Anything from you, Becca? Did anybody else have anything?
And
I
I
can
can,
see anything from.
I'll log in and give, finish up that slide deck and send it to Rob. in just a couple minutes.
Those are good.
Yep.
I did hear from one of our frequent attendees that there were no. No agenda item, and you can all guess who that may have been.
Hi Sharon.
But Sharon wasn't with us tonight. At least I don't think she was, but I'm sure she'll review the meeting later and we'll appreciate the additional items attached to the agenda. So thank you for coming in, and we look forward. It's like you have a couple of reporting dates that you put set for yourself and your plans for both of these items that we'll hear more about when that time comes.
Yeah, I, you know, like if you guys are going into buildings, as at the end of the process, I don't know whether there are opportunities to also speak to tenants to just see how, what impact it has on the livability of it. If there are just ways that, anecdotes, I don't think that there's a desire, I don't have a desire to put names associated with it, but just to get a sense. Because, if you're reducing the energy uses, the chances are that it is the tenant that is paying for the energy bill. It is the tenant that has to sit next to the leaky window. It's the tenant that is in the sweltering hot apartment because it's not insulated and keeping in the cold. So all of that stuff, and it would be really helpful to have that in a tight housing market. The ability for us to say that our housing is good is really important.
Yeah, that would be dependent. I think a lot of them are actually going to be new tenants almost every year.
Yeah,
It would require someone having been there for multiple years before and after. But on the smaller housing market, I think it's really good that we've got more available rental units now, and there's a lot bigger vacancy. People can be more choosy about it, and that's why having their rental weatherization compliance on the city website is a great way for someone to say, if I'm, measuring two different rentals that I'm gonna get, one's out of compliance and one is, probably gonna pay lower amounts here. That it's a bargaining chip for tenants.
And building off of that, well, hopefully you didn't talk about it already. I'm not making you repeat yourself, but when it comes to seeing that, is where people can find that, is there accessible ways that not only is it to view just basic, what does that mean if it's being within or out of compliance, yet not just what it means, but what are the potential benefits to you as a tenant to renting from a place that's in compliance, like all the benefits that we've been talking about.
Up till now, I would say it's people that even care, right? And because of the rental market, a lot of times the college students, they'll take whatever's available because it's close to campus. They're not even looking at some of those smaller details about it. But I do think of it as like when you buy a refrigerator or a stove or whatever, you're going to see that efficiency rating and say, yeah, so we'll work on ways to try to make that more advisable, because we do the student workshops for people moving off campus, and we do notify them about it. But again, I'm not sure how much of that really resonates, and when they're going to sign their lease, if they really care. But we're doing what we can to try to put that information up there and see if we can do it more.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, that should be the goal, because I think it's like, if I'm, to your example, if I'm going to I don't even know if I'm ever going to afford a washing machine, let alone somewhere to put it. But when I go and I see like Energy Star, I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
So you look it up, and that's what it means. Yeah. So just making that as accessible as possible. So to your point, if hopefully we're over the next couple of years, we're going to enter a more and more competitive rental market. If that is so, then that should be a major part of somebody's decision making. But to your point, if you're a first time renter, that it needs to know what all that means. So, yeah, thank you.
Anyone else have any more on this item? Not seeing anything, so thank you, Bill, for coming, and we'll look forward to hearing.
I'm gonna stay because I'm gonna lock up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's
Not
not.
going.
Well, we don't do, I don't think we'll be long. And I appreciate again, I want to extend my thank you for coming in during your vacation.
That's part of why I didn't have a report in advance. I put the finishing touches on it just before the meeting and
So that is the end of our deliberative agenda. We don't have a director's report tonight unless the DPI director wants to give a report. The next item is Councilor Items. And one of the items that I talked about last meeting, and I was a little bit tardy, but did get to you, was sort of a working list of topics in the same format that we've used in prior years for our own agenda items that we want to add to or that have been referred to us by council. We want to add to our working sort of agenda list for future meetings. And if people have, I'm just going to basically open it up for general conversation, but I will say that it seems like there is some convergence of interest around trying to push harder on mass transit, deliberating more on how we can, help GMT funding and make sure that we preserve, a vibrant GMT transit system here in the city, because it's part of a lot of our, it's part of our housing sort of policy. It's part of our climate policy, and a lot of people depend on it. So I've added that. Gene and I have talked about maybe we do a symposium to try to highlight the like we did with McNeil. And that's just an idea, and it would make it more high profile, and we get Town Meeting TV to cover it, and get some experts to come in and talk to us about mass transit. But that's just an idea, and so I'll just put that out there generally, and then also be open to feedback either here at this meeting tonight, or we can do it by email about other things that are on the list that I circulate. So I'll just open it up generally now. Anybody want to weigh in? Go ahead, Chief.
So for Becca and for Merrick, I sent Mark and Chapin and Clayton no, it wasn't Clayton, just the two of them, an email that I received from the transportation group of 350 Vermont, who has been working with a statewide advocacy group called Transportation for Vermonters. And they're advocating for public transportation, particularly around funding. So it's consistent with what we've been doing. And they're working on a statewide level. And I've been talking to them about working on a countywide level, and to the extent to which we can do it on a statewide level too. And so they said that they were interested in working with a variety of stakeholders to lobby the legislature in next year's legislative session for increased funding for public transit. And they're reaching out to other government officials besides us, legislators and advocates, to discuss public transportation. And they're interested in having to plan a kickoff or a campaign, and they're interested in us, members of this committee, and really this committee joining them in the discussion. And I told them that I thought that this was something that everybody on this committee in a bipartisan nature was interested in. And they said that they have GMT, BNRC, AARP,
VPOP and 350 Vermont as committed participants in this discussion and campaign. And so I'm hoping that we will say, yes, we will join. And I'd love for us to be able to take an action now and say yes to them as a, that we're interested in this, and let us know when your meeting is, and then we'll try to make it there. So
And I forwarded that communication to American.
great. So that is my hope.
Sounds good to me.
Great. Maybe if I could move to formally have the two support this and agree to the extent possible that we participate in it. I think that if we were to go to such a meeting, we could even all of us go and not break the open meeting law, as long as we are not acting as the TOOC, but we're working with that body. So I think that
Would you be willing, could you forward that to Rob, the original communication? So that he can
Yes.
add it to
yes, I will.
the agenda.
Yes,
If we're gonna make a motion and
yes.
do something regarding it, we ought to probably have it.
So I will do that right now.
But I'm concurrent or whatever, I think I'm comfortable voting on it, even though it's not in the public sphere. Because I think it's, all we're doing is saying that we would collectively support this.
I'll second that.
Great. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this? And the motion is for, please restate the motion.
So the motion is for us to agree to participate in this effort that was communicated to us by the transportation group of 350 Vermont.
Becca seconded. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 That's unanimous. So yeah, let us know, as you will be our envoy when they plan to have their meeting, and we can, well, some or all of us can go to that.
That's great. I totally appreciate that. I have not looked over the rest of it. I'm actually having a hard time downloading it for some reason here, because I'll lose it. So I'll try, but I might ask you to resend it. And I don't know what.
Send the invite to Rob.
No, the Excel
The
sheet.
Excel sheet. Oh, yeah, the Excel sheet. I will resend that to you. And we don't, do you want me to send it right now?
No. Let me try to unlock that.
I will send it to you regardless, just so you have it.
Okay.
But is there anybody else who wants to, at this meeting, talk more about work plan ideas? Like I say, it's sort of an ongoing and living document, really. So there's nothing that we're deciding on for the year, but just to try to keep intentionality about some of the things that have been brought to the committee and that are in the committee's jurisdiction. Keep track of it. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
I put solid waste. Recycling, just put.
Yes, that's a really, really good point. That'll be coming up for the council's action on recycling. So yes, thank you for reminding us of that. I will go ahead and add that and circulate that.
Becca, that's her hand
Go
up.
ahead, Becca.
I don't have any feedback right now. I just wanted to say I generally agreed with everything you mentioned so far. I haven't had time to review it yet because I just got back into town, but I will do that. And the only thing I might be interested in us taking up, I don't know if this would be a toque thing or more of a pack thing, which I'm also on, which is useful, but the open space plan, I just thought was a really nice comprehensive view of a lot of nature-based climate solutions, which came up a lot in our climate advisory group. And so I would be interested in looking at any kind of intersections there that could be relevant to the TOOC, but I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head. So I may come back to you with some more suggestions, Mark, but we
Okay.
can tackle that later. Thank you for putting it together, though. Appreciate it.
Good. Is there anything else at this moment that we want to talk about with regard to work plans or any other councilor items? Seeing that, we'll talk about then our next and last item on our agenda, which is our next meeting, which is tentatively scheduled for the 28th of July. Does that work for people at 5:30?
Yeah.
Does.
It does. Yeah, everybody says yes. So Rob, if you could make sure we had a location, preferably this location, I guess.
Yes, I believe this location is good, so should be good to go.
Okay, excellent. Well, that concludes our agenda. So with no further business and absent objection, I will adjourn us at 7:39. Thanks for
Thank you.
thanks everybody. Thank you. Thanks for Bill. Thanks to Bill and thanks Rob for doing staffing us remotely today.
Thanks all, and thank you, Bill, for everything you're doing.
No problem. Thank you.